Just leaving his engine on. That's great for the environment, that is. Brilliant. Hello and welcome everyone to the stream. Just getting started at the moment. Just walking up to the location now. So bear with me whilst I just get set up and started. Hopefully the mic's okay and the sound's good. We got security here already. So just bear with me as I get set up. Hi everyone, thanks for joining the stream. As you come into the chat, please put a number 1 if you're vegan, 2 if you're open to being vegan, and number 3 if you are for animal abuse. Yeah, please do start commenting in the chat and we'll get this going. Thank you for joining. Let me know if the sound's okay. Just getting started on the stream. Pop a message in the chat as we'll get this stream started. Hi everyone, hi guys, how's it going? Just getting set up at the moment. As you're entering the room, please put a number 1 if you're vegan, put a number 2 in the chat if you're open to being vegan, and put a number 3 in the chat if you are just for animal abuse, you enjoy the killing of animals. So put a number 1 in the chat if you're vegan, a number 2 in the chat if you're open to learning about what happens to animals in these industries, and put a number 3 in the chat if you're just damn right down for animal abuse, you enjoy animal abuse. Just let's see who's in the room at the moment. And yeah, let's see who we've got in the chat. So OJ Parex are number 1s, a couple of number 2s, awesome, Tony, Snow the Squirrel, a few number 3s. So we've got some proud animal abusers in the chat as well. Interesting, interesting. So, okay, awesome. So yeah, let me know if the sound's okay. Just started the stream. So a few of you are already probably wondering what I'm doing here today. So this facility behind me is a slaughterhouse. So I am at a slaughterhouse in the UK. Pop in the chat where you're tuning in from. Are you from the UK? Whereabouts in the UK? And if you're not from the UK, let me know which country you're tuning in from or streaming from. So I'm outside a slaughterhouse in the UK, basically to show you the reality, what happens to animals and the dark secrets that are behind Easter. So Easter is coming up in the next month, and I think a lot of people will be very disturbed to understand what is actually the dark secret behind Easter. And this place is responsible for a lot of that truth and a lot of those secrets. So this slaughterhouse is a slaughterhouse for sheep, for lambs. So what will happen is that these trucks will be transporting hundreds of sheep, hundreds of lambs, will come around into this facility. The trucks will have, depending on the size of the trucks, you get small grey trailers and you get big industrial sized trucks, double deckers with dozens and dozens and dozens of lambs in. So these lambs, they are just about 6 months old, often even younger. We see them coming in at 4 months old. So 4 months old, these lambs who have just been brought into this world, who have just been bred into existence, will be facilitated onto one of these trucks, and it will come into this site. Well, they'll be offloaded into the very rear of this facility. they'll be taken to the back and they'll be unloaded into what's called a lairage. And this is where all the animals will come off of the truck and they'll be loaded into basically a big holding pen. Now, once they're put into the pen, depending on how many animals they're processing in a day, will depend on how quickly they stay in that pen or get pushed through the facility, through this huge industrial site. And what will happen is these sheep will go in almost one by one and they'll be funneled through almost like into a conveyor belt system where the workers will pick them up by their skin, by their fur, by their wool. They will throw them down these conveyor belts into the system, and then what will happen is the slaughterhouse workers will attempt to stun these animals. They will get two sort of prongs and they will try and clamp the sheep's head in order to attempt to stun them. Often that doesn't work. Sometimes they use a different device to try and knock them on their heads to stun them as well. But countless investigations inside facilities like this one show that stunning doesn't even work. These lambs will attempt to be stunned, and then what will happen is that the slaughterhouse workers will then grab a knife, they will hang those sheep up by their legs often, and they will slice their necks open. Sometimes the sheep will be going down this sort of narrow conveyor, they'll be trapped in like this so they can't move, and then the slaughterhouse worker will slice their throats and watch them bleed open. One by one, a conveyor belt system, all day long, all happening behind these gates here. So please put in the chat how you feel about that. Put in the chat, how do you feel about that? And it's probably a good time to start the first poll, just to see, again, who have we got in the chat? So the question that's coming up is the following. So, should we respect animals? Just going to move that over to the right. So let's see who's in the room. Let's see what sort of people we have in this chat. Should we respect animals? That is the question that I want to find out what the consensus is in the room at the moment. 10 votes so far. People saying, fuck the animals. Interesting. You just really don't care about other sentient beings. So far we've got an 86% majority saying that we should respect animals. Let's see if that changes in a minute. David Bork saying, so sad, young lambs. Yeah, absolutely. So these lambs are often, they come into this site every single day throughout the whole year. And on average, they're about 4, 5 or 6 months old. Now, we know that sheep can live well over 10 years old, 15 years old in their, in a sanctuary, in their natural ways. But we know that these sheep are being bred into existence to be forced into a slaughterhouse, simply sold for food, for lamb meat, lamb chops, lamb doner, whatever those food sources are that people are buying in supermarkets and kebab shops. This is a result of what happens in this facility here. Just move that pole up. This site behind me is absolutely ginormous. What you can't see is the sheer scale of it. These gates go back very far. You've got a huge building to the left, a huge building to the right, and then you've got the lairage right down the far end. And for anyone that is coming into this chat as you're joining the stream, please come in and put a number 1 if you're vegan. That's interesting. So Mahika, I love animals, not eating. Exactly, that's exactly it. Because the simple phrase, you can't love animals and eat them. So someone random there, I love animals, everyone, and I will eat them too. You can't love animals and eat them. You wouldn't, you love your family members, you're not going to eat them. You can't love something and eat them. They are opposing phrases. So as you're coming into this stream, put a number 1 in the comments, in the chat if you're vegan. Put a number 1 if you're vegan. Type a number 2 in the comments if you're open to being vegan or open to hearing more about what happens inside these facilities, inside these factories, inside these farms. Put number 2 in the chat if you're open to that, and put number 3 if you're just pro animal abuse. You're just wanting to abuse animals, you enjoy abusing animals, you get some sort of thrill out of animals being abused. So type a number 1 if you're vegan, 2 if you're open to learning more, and number 3 if you're for animal abuse. Hey Aaron, good to see you in the chat. Hopefully the audio and all that's all good. Absolutely shattered from yesterday, Aaron. But it was a good event. So what I'm just going to get up and show you is So I've been to this site many, many times. I go to a lot of different slaughterhouses all around the country, taking different animals in. So we've got a truck coming out at the moment. This is a pallet truck. So often they deliver pallets to transport, different things around these facilities. What's even interesting is behind some of these gates, they'll even just stack pallets up just to try and stop you from looking in. They will literally bring all the pallets over to that gate to try and block up like a big wall so you can't look in, because they don't want the public to see. And surely you've got to ask yourself the question, if people are trying to hide this, why are they trying to hide this? If it's so open, what business is trying to hide what they're selling? What business doesn't want customers coming up to their front door or doesn't want people outside? And essentially what I'm doing, I'm raising awareness of what this facility is. Because nowhere on any of these signs around this site, nowhere here does this say what this place is. Not one place does it say this is a slaughterhouse or this is an abattoir. They simply stick up ABP branding to say, we're a food group. No one knows that this is a slaughterhouse. People drive past and have no idea. Roscoe saying, I reported you. You reported me for simply speaking, for raising awareness of what this facility is. There is nothing illegal about what I'm doing. I'm here peacefully on public land, showing you, the public, what is happening at these facilities. And so, trucks will be coming in throughout the day, so please do stay on the stream and you'll see trucks coming in and out. And what you'll see on these trucks is big trailers, sometimes small grey ones. And these are the victims on side or inside these trucks. This is exactly what you'll see as the trucks come in. Lambs inside of trailers, about 4 months old. And they'll be taken behind these gates into the lairage to then have their throat sliced. And how does that make you feel? Put in the chat how it makes you feel looking at that. Looking at these animals in their final moments. How does it make you feel looking at that footage? And similarly, these are cows going in. Dairy cows, after being relentlessly milked, having their babies taken away from them. How does that make you feel? Look into their eyes. People saying hungry, I don't know anyone that actually eats a raw cow in their form. You don't go and grab them with your hands and bite them with your teeth. You go to your local supermarket and purchase them as simple products. You're completely disconnected from the animals that are going inside these facilities. So just looking at the poll now, so we've got 55 votes in and 75% of you are saying, yes, we should respect animals. So I guess I will ask the question, if you voted yes, we should respect animals, put in the chat if you're also vegan. Type in vegan or type in not vegan into the chat, because 75% have voted for we should respect animals. So I expect in the comments now, 75% of the responses to all say vegan. Because if you're saying not vegan, then you have a disconnect between your own morals and your choices that you're making. Because can you truly respect animals? Can you truly respect an animal if you go and chop their head off a few months of their life? Is that respectful? Would you do that to a pet or companion animal? Would you do that to your family members? If you respect people on the streets, would you respect them by sending them into a slaughterhouse? So here comes this is a truck that will basically be transporting the offcuts of all the body parts, essentially. You'll often see on these trucks that it'll actually say not fit for human consumption. That one doesn't have it labelled. But think, when they take these body parts, when they chop up these body parts, some of it will be sent to processing facilities, manufacturers, to then send them to supermarket shelves. But obviously a lot of the offcuts, their heads, their hides, will end up in these other trucks where God knows what happens to them. Still seeing an overwhelming majority on we should respect animals. Thanks, Aaron, for being in the chat and responding to a lot of these comments. Keep the comments coming in. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have. And we've got Aaron, Soytan Man. Please do give him a follow. He's on YouTube, on Instagram. Follow the Soytan Man. Yeah, great activist. So, Halborn, do you see me stopping vegan trucks, you knob? Firstly, what is a vegan truck? Interesting. Secondly, do you see me stopping trucks? Haven't seen that happen yet. I haven't stopped any trucks, so that's kind of a pointless comment, that one, whoever said that. So, as I put in the title of this stream, this is the Easter's dark secret being exposed. So Easter's coming up in a couple of weeks. And in the UK and potentially around the world, it's almost a tradition that people will go for a roast dinner. And often in that dinner, people will choose a roast lamb. What people fail to see or fail to connect the dots is when they're driving through the countryside and they're seeing these baby lambs being born right now. You know, it's what they call lambing season. You'll see the first few lambs of the year coming through. Very shortly, they'll be sent into these gates of hell to be slaughtered. Those baby lambs that people go, oh, they're cute, they'll be coming into this specific facility and other ones around the country that slaughter lambs and sheep, all for the sake of a Sunday roast, all for the sake of a Sunday meal. That baby lamb has had to lose their life just for your taste pleasure of a 5-10 minute meal. Does that justify that roast dinner, knowing that you can just choose something else? You can keep having cultural traditions. You can still have those same meals, but just take the animals off your plate. You can have a vegan roast. You can have a nut roast. Any other roast. I mean, a roast dinner is majority vegetables anyway, so just take the animals off. You get the same taste, and you can stop slaughtering animals. So I'd like to see in the chat, what justification do you have after hearing that? Do you still have to actually say, yes, I'm going to order a lamb roast. I'm still going to order that food. So all the workers are just coming out now. Most likely a lunch break. All the workers coming out. So in this facility, you have admin staff, you have slaughterhouse staff, you have people on the kill floor who are actually doing the killing of those animals. You're having people that pushed the animals through the processing right at the back of the facility. You've got security. Just by activists coming here, they have to pay for security to stay outside the entire time just to keep an eye on us. Imagine if we put that pressure on every slaughterhouse around the country. Put a yes in the chat if you've been scrolling through live streams today and you've seen activists outside other slaughterhouses. Put a yes in the chat if you've seen activists like myself outside facilities like this. Just curious to see if you've seen anyone else online today. This is part of a growing movement called Project Livestream. So we've got Pepe saying yes. So this is part of Project Livestream. This is number 9, where every month activists go and stand outside slaughterhouses, exposing the truth behind these gates and showing you, the public, exactly what they don't want you to see. So what I'd highly recommend is, if you want to see what happens inside these facilities, in the video description, you'll see a link to what's called 3minutes.wtf. You can copy and paste that into your browser. It's completely free. And in just 3 minutes, you can see exactly what happens inside these facilities. Many people have, on these live streams, they go to the video description, they watch that video, they then come back onto the stream, and then you can say what you saw, say how it made you feel. People go vegan straight after watching that 3 minutes from the link in my video description, and it's completely free to watch. And if you haven't already, please do double tap that screen, hit that like button. It just gets shown to more and more people. Double tap that screen. It massively helps the algorithm boost this to more and more people. So we've got Brandon Techless who's quoting some things. So God granted human, just so I'll stop him from spanning, I'll respond to this comment. God granted humans dominion over animals. What do you think he actually meant by dominion? Do you think he meant to care for them, or do you think he meant to slaughter them and butcher them? Because the question back to you is, how would Jesus kill an animal? How would Jesus kill an animal? If you've got the choice of being kind and compassionate to an animal, surely your faith and your God would say, yes, you should be compassionate to that animal. Not, you should chop that animal's head off. I don't see that written anywhere in text. And even if it did, it doesn't justify the actions. Cheers, Aaron, for, responding to that. So as you're coming into the stream now, put a number 1, type a number 1 in the comments if you're vegan, type a number 2 in the chat if you're open to hearing more, and type a number 3 in the chat if you are just for animal abuse. So here we have a food service van, delivery van, maybe taking some offcuts away, taking some of the animal's body parts to processing facilities. Let's have a look at the numbers. So type a number 1 if you're vegan, a number 2 if you're opening to learning more, and number 3 if you're for animal abuse. Not sure what the number 4 means. So I believe we've got a truck coming now. No, it's just a different tractor. So this road, you just get a lot of farm vehicles coming through. You can never really tell. So I'm saying, I'm not Christian, but Jesus provided fish for the people, so he's accepting the eating of fish. The question isn't that, though. The question is, how would Jesus kill an animal? If Jesus was stood right in front of an animal, how would he kill them? How would he do it? How would he do that in good faith and in good conscience? So 105 votes in now, and still an overwhelming majority saying we should respect animals. So in this chat then, we should have 70% of people should be vegan in this live stream. And I hope that that's the case. Morty saying nothing in the world is actually vegan. So Morty, what I would question you is, do you understand what veganism actually is? Do you know what a vegan is? And if you don't, that's absolutely fine. I will now proceed to explain what a vegan is, because some people think veganism is a diet. Some people think that it's about saving every single animal. Veganism is a simple principle. Veganism means we should live without exploiting animals. So that means we should just live without enslaving them, killing them for food, for clothing, using them for entertainment, using them for animal testing. Veganism is just saying we should stop exploiting them, we should stop using them for any purpose. We should just leave animals alone. That's the concept of veganism. So the practice within veganism is obviously, if you're not exploiting an animal, you shouldn't be consuming their flesh. You shouldn't be supporting a system that enslaves them, breeds them in their billions, and then sends them into these sort of slaughterhouses. Put in the chat if you did already know what veganism actually was, or put in the chat if this was actually something you've just learned, because like I say, a lot of people don't understand what veganism actually is. It's just the fact we shouldn't exploit them. Someone's saying, why shouldn't we? Well, I mean, a very simple summary would be, always put yourself in their position. When you're trying to, think from other points of view, think about oppressions in society, put yourself in the victims or the animals' point of view. Put yourself in their shoes. Would you like to be bred and sent to a slaughterhouse at a few months old? Would you like to be bred, let's say, if you're in the dairy industry, if you're a male calf, you're just shot in the head under a 1 month old because you're no use to the industry? Put a comment in the chat. Type dairy into the chat if you want me to talk about the dairy industry, and put lamb in the chat if you want me to talk about what happens in the lamb industry. So comment dairy or comment lamb, and I'll talk about either of those industries depending on what you'd like to learn. So I'm here to educate. I'm here to show you the truth. So the first comment I've seen is dairy. So I will start off with dairy, and then perhaps I'll talk about what happens to lambs afterwards as well. Also just checking that, because obviously that's management coming out now. Just taking their staff away. That's hilarious. So we've obviously got security behind. I don't know if you can see. Can you see that? There we go. Let me just zoom that view so you can see security. So one of the staff just came out and sat on the wall just there, and management basically told them to come out and move. which is hilarious that they're having to, again, like hide. They don't want, potentially because I can go and speak to them, they don't want people speaking about these industries. So anyway, so I'm going to talk about what happens in the dairy industry, and then after that I'll talk about this specific site and what happens to lambs. And please put in the comments as I'm talking through this whether you did or whether you didn't know any of this information that I'm about to tell you. So the dairy industry. This is where female cows are forcibly impregnated. They take the semen from a bull and they inject it into the rear of a female cow. Like humans, cows will then become pregnant and go through months cycle of that pregnancy, and then they will give birth to their young. So female cows will then give birth to calves. If that calf is born male, they are not have any use in the dairy industry because male calves don't produce milk. They don't produce dairy. So what happens is, under 1 month old, they are most likely shot on the farm themselves or sent into a slaughterhouse like this facility. In under 1 month old, thousands of male calves every single year are slaughtered. And if they're born female, they'll be separated from their mother. They'll be put into these white hutches where they will basically spend the first few months of their lives away from their mothers. And once they're old enough, they'll go through that same cycle of forced impregnations, giving birth to their young. And then, so for the female cow, once they've given birth, their babies are separated, sometimes killed. They'll then be impregnated again and again and again until they becomes spent in the industry. And that is why they become basically totally exhausted. They become unprofitable. And then they are sent to a slaughterhouse. So did you know that female dairy cows are also sent to slaughterhouses for meat? They are sent to slaughterhouses for cheap meat. They are sent there for things like cheeseburgers or pet food. That's the reality of the dairy industry. So anyone in the chat right now who's vegetarian but still supports the dairy industry, you're paying for those cows to be sent to a slaughterhouse. So please do put in the chat if that was something that you didn't know or you did know before. Was this new information? Did you know that? So that's the dairy industry. And so please, if you're vegetarian in this chat, maybe you really should think about your choices. If you're paying for dairy, you're still paying for animals to be killed in slaughterhouses. So now I'm going to move on to talking about this specific site. So this is a slaughterhouse in the UK. This is a slaughterhouse for sheep, for lambs. These lambs will come in on trucks and trailers. These lambs will be about 4, 5 or 6 months old. At this time of the year, because we've got Easter coming up, those lambs can be even younger as they're basically going to be slaughtered for the mass festival where people have this disgusting ritual in that they eat lamb on an Easter Sunday. So those lambs will come into this facility, they'll be taken to the rear of the site, they'll be taken out the back into the lairage, they'll be funneled in, most likely beaten and kicked off of the trailers, funneled through the processing site, and then they'll be basically put into almost like a conveyor belt. It's like a diagonal conveyor belt where the sheep go in one by one, down the conveyor belt they go, and then the workers will grab them by their necks, by their legs, by their heads. They will attempt to stun them, but we know that stunning doesn't work. They can use these electric prongs and they will try and basically prong the animals in their heads to stun them, or they'll use almost like knocking them on their head, but they'll use a stunner to try and stun them off the back of their heads. Again, you don't know, well, we know that this doesn't actually stun the animals. Countless investigations have filmed inside these facilities, and you can see that the sheep and the lambs, they're still conscious, they're still fully conscious. And then they'll grab them and then they'll slice their necks open, they'll let them bleed out all over the floor, and then they'll throw them down the line one by one. It's just a constant cycle, a constant system of what happens to these lambs inside this facility. This is the dark secret that is behind Easter. All those people that are buying a roast dinner on Easter Sunday and choosing lamb, you're paying for baby lambs to come into these facilities. If you're paying on Easter Sunday for a lamb roast dinner, you're paying for this sheep to be killed. You're paying for all of these to die at just 4 months old. How does that make you feel? Knowing that you are personally responsible for the death of those lambs just for the sake of a Sunday roast. How does that actually make you feel? Put in the chat how it makes you feel knowing that you're responsible for that. But the good thing is there's an alternative. You know, I've mentioned before, you know, if you're still wanting a roast dinner to celebrate the tradition of Easter, you can still have a roast dinner. Just take the animals off your plate. You can have a vegan roast. You can have a nut roast. You can have a roast dinner that's just vegetables. I don't care, but take the animals off of your plate and you can stop supporting what happens to these animals inside these facilities and inside this disgusting industry. Because you yourself, you on this live stream right now are responsible for those animals coming into these facilities if you're paying for their body parts on your plate. And I'm still seeing, so we've got 146 votes in the chat on that poll in the top right now. Still 68% saying we should respect animals. So the question is, if you have voted yes to respecting animals, are you vegan? Are you vegan if you voted yes? And if you're not vegan, put in the comments why you think we can respect them, but also pay for them to be killed. So just picking up some comments, Kai's saying you need meat. Well, 100% you don't need meat. You do not need animal flesh to thrive and survive. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here. Millions of vegans all around the world wouldn't be standing here. You don't need meat to survive. And you can look at the science. You can look at the British Dietetic Association, the American Dietetic Association, the World Health Organization, the University of Oxford. Some of the biggest studies of their kind all show that you can thrive, survive on a plant-based diet throughout all forms of life, from infancy to adulthood to old age. And for the person who said you grew up on meat, there are vegans who have never eaten meat in their entire lives. There are babies being born right now who are being brought up by vegan parents and are thriving. You do not need meat, and that is scientifically proven. And you know, I would not be standing here if that was true. So that's a thing that's debunked, and maybe that's something that you just didn't know. You know, maybe you didn't know that you. And that's a possible misconception. Again, like that's something the industry does very well, but you can thrive off any sort of plant-based products for whatever you need. So if you're into sports and you're looking for like high protein, I'm seeing a few people in the chats talking about protein. All protein comes from plants. How do you think the cows and the sheep get their protein? It all comes from plants. And if you want high, dense, nutritional, high protein foods, you've got tofu, you've got tempeh, you've got seitan, you've got beans, legumes, all of those foods that don't involve animals coming inside these facilities. So what justification do you have? What justification do you have? Seeing Raw Melody, why do you lie? There is absolutely nothing that I'm saying that is a lie. This is all factually correct. And if you don't believe me, go and Google it yourself. Go online, go look at the science, go look at the studies, go and ask ChatGPT if you really want. But the fact is that animals are coming into these facilities every single day, all around the country, all around the world. And it's not justifiable because we do not have to enslave animals in their billions just for the sake of a meal. So please, there's a lot of people that would have come into this chat now. Type a number 1 in the comments if you're vegan. Type a number 2 in the comments if you're open to hearing more. And type a number 3 if you're just supporting animal abuse. You're wanting to fund this disgusting industry. Type a 1 if you're vegan. Type a 2 if you're open to learning more. Type a 3 in the chat if you're just pro-animal abuse. You just want to abuse animals. Because it's, you know, the number 2s are really who I'm trying to speak for today. The number 1s, we've got Vicky, we've got Truas, we've got Dom there. Thank you so much for being in this chat. And if you want to respond to the comments that are coming through, please do respond to any of the arguments. And it's great. We need lots of vegans in these chats and in these live streams to help counteract some of these arguments, to debunk some of these myths. Like when people are saying we need meat, it's great when vegans in these chats, you know, just debunk that. It's great to see all the number 1s in this chat. Thank you so much for being here. So for the number 2s in the chat, what I'd urge you to do is go to this video description, go to the description of the live stream, and you'll see a link to something called 3minutes.wtf. And that will take you to a site that just lets you watch a 3-minute video. There's a truck coming. These are the victims. And they'll go behind the gates now. They've rushed them in so quickly. Notice how quickly they wanted to drive through. Security trying to stop people from coming in. Yeah, no worries. They were the trucks coming in. Look how quickly they were driving. Aaron, let me know if you managed to see any of that. The truck was coming in so quickly, it's hard to get footage of that, but hopefully you managed to see them. Again, like, these are the victims coming through right now. As I mentioned, those people saying, oh, I'm here, I'm lying. This is happening right now. This is happening right now. So I can show you. This is the truck that just came in. Keep watching and you'll see who was inside those trailers. These were the victims. Look how many there are, all bundled into that truck to then go behind these gates. Let me just see if I can pause that. Look how many there are. How does that make you feel? That truck has literally just come in and they're going to be offloaded at the back of this facility now. How does that make you feel? Yeah, it was clear. Cheers. So yeah, anyone in that stream, you would have seen those animals that have just come in. How does that make you feel? Is there anyone in this chat that actually feels sad? Does anyone feel sad for those animals that have just come in? Those animals that have just come into that, on that trailer? I'll just show it to you again. This is the truck that came in for those that missed it. All the sheep. These lambs are about 4 months old, potentially up to 6 months old, going into the back of that facility. This is the truth behind Easter. This is the dark truth behind Easter. Because if you're paying for a lamb roast on Easter Sunday, you have just paid for those animals to come in on that truck. You have just personally been responsible for that. How does that make you feel? Yeah, cheers Aaron for moderating. You know, encourage the comments. Please do keep comments coming in the chat. But if you are just going to spam it with the same thing and block the chat, it's unfair on other people commenting. So that's why we do have moderators in these chats. So please put number 1 in the chat if you're vegan. Put number 2 in the chat if you're open to being vegan. Perhaps put number 2 in the chat if that truck that came in made you think a little bit more. And put number 3 in the chat if you're here just to rant, just to slag off vegans, just to, you know, being an animal abuser. Put a number 3 in the chat. Type a number 1 if you're vegan. Type a number 2 if you're open to learning more. Type a number 3 if you're pro animal abuse. And let's see who we've got. 3, 3, 3. Any number 2s in the chat? Anyone who's actually in this live stream that is curious to learn more about what happens inside this? Anyone in this live stream who felt sad about that truck that just came in? There's a number 2. For all the number 2s, and maybe you're just, you know, observing and watching the stream. Maybe you're just, you know, you don't want to comment, and that's absolutely fine. And I say thank you for being here. So back, Treeban saying I was a 2. Carlotta saying 2 and 3. Just curious, what does that mean that you were a 2, and what does a 2 and a 3 mean? number twos. So for all the number twos, as I've mentioned, in the video description, there's a link to something called 3minutes.wtf. You can go and watch a 3-minute video. Oh, there's another truck, there's another truck. Oh, let me turn that around. Feel free to screen record this. Look at them. Were you able to ask the next truck to stop? Can you ask the next truck to stop and give me a minute? No, you can't even ask? No? Are you not allowed to?
Can you go please behind the line?
I can, but obviously you can also ask the trucks. That's all I'm here for, is just the animals. I'm not here for you, I'm not here for the workers, I'm just here to try and document the animals. So for safety, if that's your job, it's better to stop the trucks. That's all I'll say. So again, another truck that's just come in, a huge, huge trailer. Please put in the chat if you are able to capture that footage. Did you see that truck that just came in? How did that make you feel? Just whilst I get the footage up. Are you shouting now? Double tap that screen just whilst I load this up. Big truck that just came in. So, if for those who missed it, this is the truck that just came in. Aaron, let me know in the comments if it came out clearly on the live stream or not. Look at the size of this trailer. This truck that just came in seconds ago. These are the victims. If you're paying for lamb products, these are the victims who are dying for you. Look into their eyes. Look how beautiful they are. How can anyone justify this? In the comments, how are you justifying what's happening to these sheep? Let me just go back to that one sheep who was in focus. Can you honestly look at this individual here and say, yeah, that's absolutely fine? How can you say that it's okay to chop the heads off of these animals? If you're not vegan, you're paying for this animal to be killed. This is the dark truth behind Easter. Seriously. How are people in this chat still justifying that? People not making those connections. Comment in the chat if any of those trucks with the lambs came on actually made you feel sad. I'm curious to know who's in this room. I see a lot of trolls, a lot of people just saying hungry and food. But I'm curious to know, does anyone actually feel moved? Does anyone actually feel sad by seeing those animals come in on the trucks? Because there's a clear so Maggie Rose saying they weren't lambs. Well, what were they then, Maggie? What were they? Because they 100% were lambs. They were about 4, 5 or 6 months old. Grown sheep. How old do you think they were, Maggie? How old do you think they were? And again, this is what just people don't understand. People that think, oh, you know, these sheep live happily for years out in these fields. No, the reality, they're about 4 months old when they come onto these trucks and go into the site like they just have done. So Carlotta's saying, I like eating meat, but I feel bad for the animals. Well, you know, if you feel bad, if you feel sad, then you can just make a difference to your choices. You can make a change. That's why so many of us are vegan now, because like myself, I watched a documentary, saw what happened inside these facilities, and I wanted to be a part of that. Sounds like there's potentially another trailer coming. No. Again, it's because we're on a road with a lot of farm traffic. Like, this is another one going past now. You never really know what's coming down, so you've got always trying to stay vigilant. Didn't see your comment, Maggie, about how old they were, but hey ho. It's so simple. If you respect animals, how are you saying in the live chat, how are you saying into this chat that, you know, we should eat them and you know, it makes you feel hungry? There's a clear disconnect between that poll at the top saying we should respect animals and the people in this chat saying, oh, well, you know, it's fine to eat them, it's fine to abuse them. There is such a disconnect here. Back Treebound saying it's not morally wrong and that's where you lose people. The question is about, you know, if you're an animal, if you put yourself in their position, is it moral and is it ethical to take that life away? Is it all right? You know, if I'm the animal, is it all right for someone to kill me just because of food or for clothing? Does that make it justifiable? Because it's very interesting when you flip the position, you put yourself in their shoes, your perspective changes very, very quickly. So put your questions into the chat. I'm going to try and just flip to the bottom of the chat now. Put your comments in and I'll try and pick one up if you've got any genuine questions that you'd like me to talk through or any strong points of view. I mean, Aaron, you might have seen these already, but you know, it's time for me to ring my little dinger bell of plants feel pain, plants are alive. So a few people mentioning plants. Plants aren't... Oh, I laugh because it comes up so often. Plants don't feel pain. Plants don't have sentience. They don't have brains and they don't have pain receptors. They physically cannot feel pain. But even if they could, that's still a reason for being vegan. So here's the truck coming out now. So all those sheep would have been offloaded from that truck. They'll all be heading to the kill floor now. And it's the one thing I always say in these streams when people say, oh no, plants do feel pain. When you graduate primary school, you'll learn that plants don't feel pain. Maybe you'll get there once you graduate primary school. Plants can react to stimuli, just like other things can react to stimuli. It doesn't mean they feel pain, it doesn't justify. If you're saying, you know, plants feel pain, how does that justify that lamb that's just come in and had their heads chopped off? How the hell does plants feel pain justify animals having their heads chopped off? That doesn't make sense. Yeah, Aaron, literally, I'm convinced nobody did science, you know, after the age of 5. Any other questions? So I've answered the plant question now, even though people are absolutely deluded and they think that plants feel pain, which is hilarious. NK10 saying they're chopping their heads off. Yes, so inside these facilities, the lambs will be taken out the back to the lairage. They'll funnel them through onto this conveyor belt-like system. They will grab the sheep, they'll grab the lambs, and they'll basically try and prong them into their heads in the attempt to stun them. We know that the stunning doesn't work. And what will happen is they will grab them and they will slice their necks open. They will slice the lambs' necks open. They will hang them up by their legs. And that's what happens inside the slaughterhouse. They have their heads chopped off, all for the sake of a meal, all for the sake of people ordering lamb products. For example, in their upcoming roast dinner for Easter, you can save animals' lives by not paying for this. You can save lambs' lives by not choosing a lamb roast. It's all supply and demand. This whole industry is all supply and demand. The more people that are taking animal products off of shelves in supermarkets, The more people that are saying, I want that animal product in a restaurant, you're saying, I'm demanding this. And as you keep buying, they'll keep supplying. If you take an item off the shelf, they'll just replace it. The more people that say, no, I'm not going to support this, they're not going to keep producing and breeding the same animals when people aren't buying it. Business models won't work like that. They are bred purely into existence just to satisfy, products on a shelf, essentially. So NK10, thank you for your questions, by the way. These are the sort of questions that I like to answer because they're genuine and they're not, not just a troll spamming. So you put, are there any humane meat productions in the UK? So this is something which, again, this is a marketing trick that the meat industry use to make people feel less guilty about their choices. There is no such thing as a humane slaughterhouse, as a humanely killed method, because they're both opposing words. How can you humanely kill someone that doesn't want to die? Humane, that's synonymous with kindness, compassion, benevolence. How can you compassionately kill? Those words don't work. This is a marketing thing that makes people feel less guilty. There is no humane way to do it. And when you go by the government's guidelines of what's a humane way, they say that the most humane way to kill pigs is to force them into CO2 gas chambers here in the UK. 90% of pigs in the UK are killed in these gas chambers. They are loaded down on these like gondola metal crates into concentrated CO2 gas where the pigs will burn from the insides, their lungs, their eyes, they will suffocate to death. That is what the government, that is what DEFRA says is the most humane way. Put in the comments if you think that is humane or not humane. Being killed in a gas chamber, burning from the insides and suffocating to death. Is that humane? Put in the comments, is that humane or is that not humane? I'd like to see what people's opinions are on the humane slaughter. But thank you for the question. The sad reality is there is no such thing as a humane way to kill someone. In the same way as, again, if we flip it, we reframe it. If I was to say to you, how would I humanely kill you right now? How would I humanely kill you? It's not possible. If you don't want to die, there is no humane way that I would kill you because you don't want to have your life taken away. And that's the reality. Dirt and Deliverance sounds pretty humane to me. So Dirt and Deliverance, you wouldn't mind being lowered into a CO2 gas chamber then? You wouldn't mind being lowered down, screaming for your life, whilst you burn from the insides, your eyes burn, your lungs burn, you suffocate to death. You wouldn't mind swapping places with them right now? So YTQT saying, thanks for convincing us to become non-vegetarian, mission accomplished. Well, I'm not advocating for vegetarianism. I'm advocating for veganism because vegetarians are still paying for animals to be slaughtered in these facilities. Vegetarians are still paying for dairy cows to be shot in the head. They're still paying for male chicks to be killed on macerators. There's a lot of things I think people in this chat don't realize that happen. So I'm encouraging any comments that have genuine questions to help you understand that. So Evie is saying that is a lie. What's a lie? Put in a chat if you want me. Put in a chat dairy if you want me to talk about dairy. Put eggs if you want me to talk about the egg industry, and put in lambs if you want me to talk about the lamb industry. Put dairy, eggs, or lamb into the chat, and I'll pick up one of those talking points. Because I'm happy to educate, happy to talk through. This isn't stuff that I've read, this is stuff I've seen from investigations, this is stuff I've seen in person. So I'm happy to talk about all of that. So I'm just going to see what the common consensus is. Dairy, lambs, pigs. Is there any majority? Type in dairy into the comments, or lambs, or eggs, or pigs, and I'm happy to talk about either of those. And we'll go through each as the live stream progresses. So I think the most common is dairy and then eggs. So I'll talk about dairy first, and then I'll talk about eggs. So the dairy industry, and please do double tap the screen and hit the like button just to share this to more and more people. Maybe you want to share this with someone who doesn't know about the dairy industry and they might benefit from this. The dairy industry, this is where you take a female cow Then you take semen from a bull and you inject it using a metal rod and a fist that goes into the rear of the female cow. Literally into the rear. You're putting a whole arm inside the rear of the female cow with the bull semen to impregnate that female cow. Then, once she is impregnated, she'll go through months of pregnancy, just like we as humans would. And when those mother cows give birth, if those calves that are born, if they're male, they're most likely shot and killed less than 1 month old. Because they are of no use to the dairy industry. Male calves don't produce milk. So those male calves are going to be shot, maybe on the farm, or maybe taken to a slaughterhouse. If the calf is born and it's female, they'll still be separated from their mothers and they'll be kept in white hutches until they grow old enough to then be impregnated as well. So female cows are just going through a relentless cycle of forced impregnations, pregnancies, they give birth, they then have their babies stolen from them, killed if they're male, separated if they're female. And then what happens is, because of the relentless milking process, they become physically exhausted and they become unprofitable and they become what's known as spent in the industry. So what happens to those dairy cows, those female cows at about 3 to 5 years old? They are sent inside these facilities. They slaughter dairy cows between 3 and 5 years old because they're of no use to the dairy industry. And if they're male calves, as I said, they're killed in less than 1 month old. This is the dairy industry. So vegetarians, you're paying for all of that to happen. Comment there saying, damn, that's disgusting. Yeah, absolutely right. It's horrifying. And I think vegetarians sometimes have a good motive, but what they fail to recognize is they're also paying for cows to be killed, whether it's 1 month old or if it's 3 to 5 years old for female cows. These cows should live to over 20 years old. Yet they're killed at a fraction of their lifespan after having their babies taken from them and their milk intended for their young. That's the dairy industry. Put in the chat if that was something that you didn't know before and that's something that you've just learned. Or put in the chat if that's something that you already knew but you're somehow fine with. So just looking at the poll, so we've got 254 votes still. That same percentage, 70% of us, or 70% of you in the live stream are all saying we should respect animals. So I guess the question now is, I've just spoken about the dairy industry very succinctly. Would you say that that is respect? Is that respecting animals? Type yes if you think that forcibly impregnating, stealing babies and slaughtering cows. Put yes if you think that's respectful, and put no if you think that's not respectful. Because I want to align the poll here. 70% think we should respect animals. So do you think the dairy industry is respectful, yes or no? Tree camper saying yes, you think it's respectful to forcibly impregnate, take babies away, kill babies. You think that's respectful, tree camper? I really question your morals there. Seeing a lot of no's. Ruth, Vicky, Hemmingsley. So Ruth, who said no, Vicky said no, Hemmingsley said no. So now the question is, are you vegan or are you open to learning more about being vegan? That's what I'm curious about, because you clearly said that we respect animals and the dairy industry is not respectful. So someone's saying I respect animals, but they are pretty tasty. So the question there is, does taste justify murder, killing? You know, if you're tasty, does that mean I can kill you? No, that's not ethical. Clackety saying, I believe in ethical eating of meat. How do you ethically kill someone and eat their meat? How do you ethically do that, Clackety? Put in the comments. So RTA, TRT saying, convince me to be vegan. Well, it's very simple. When I explain what veganism is we should live without harming and exploiting animals. We should just leave animals alone. That's the simple premise of it. There's no sort of, need for a persuasion, because surely if you understand the fundamentals that we should respect animals, we shouldn't breed them into their billions, enslave them and kill them at a fraction of their lifespan just for the sake of food and clothing and entertainment. We should just live without exploiting animals. We should live harmoniously. That's the concept of veganism. Just be kind to animals, respect them. Don't send them into a slaughterhouse. Ruth saying, do vegans eat fish? Absolutely not, because, you know, in the fishing industry, you're killing fish. You're literally suffocating them to death, or you're just bludgeoning them over the head. These fish feel pain. These fish have sentience. These fish have similar experiences that we do to humans. They have families. They have subjective experiences. Put yourself in their position. When anyone's saying, oh, maybe I could be vegan, or, you know, does that animal feel pain? Put yourself in their position and then answer the question. Someone said, I'm a vegan, but I occasionally eat meat. Well, you're not a vegan. You're just not. A vegan is someone who opposes, as a principle, that we shouldn't exploit animals. Veganism is not a diet. Veganism is not a diet. Part of veganism is not eating animals, but it's also not wearing them, not paying for their entertainment. So to become vegan, you just stop paying for animals to be exploited. So you stop paying for animals to be sent into slaughterhouses for food. You stop paying for animals to be chopped up and having their skin and their fur ripped off. You stop paying for animals to run around race courses and racetracks to be killed. You stop paying for them to be tested on. That's all veganism. You're saying, right, I'm not going to pay for them to be exploited. I'm not going to pay into those industries. It's as simple as that. You just choose to respect animals. Ruth saying, are vegans and vegetarians the same? No, vegetarians pay for the dairy industry, which I've explained. Vegetarians pay for dairy cows to be sent to slaughter, their calves to be taken away and shot in the head. So I'll go back to another comment, because again, people may still not understand the difference between vegan and vegetarian. Veganism is a principle where we don't exploit animals. Vegetarianism is a diet that still pays for meat, still pays for dairy and eggs. So let's talk about the egg industry then. So put in the comments if you knew this next fact or not. Male chicks in the egg industry are killed at 1 day old. Put in the comments if you knew that. Male chicks in the egg industry are killed at 1 day old because they're hatched, and if they're male, they are sent into a macerator. They are blended up alive because, similar like the dairy industry where male calves don't produce dairy, male chicks won't lay eggs. So they are literally put into a big blender and blended up and killed on their first day of life. Did you know that? But similarly, let's say chickens outside of the egg industry that are in the meat industry, chickens bred for meat, they're killed at 42 days old, about 6 weeks old. At a fraction of their lifespan. These chickens can live to over 10 years old. Over 10 years old, yet we kill them at 6 weeks old. Or 1 day old if they're a male chick. Just going to scroll into the chat to see if people did or didn't know that. So Ruth, you said no. Did anyone else know that about male chicks in the egg industry? Maylee's put vegans and vegetarians are a choice. Yes, being a vegan is a choice, and that's the idea, is the fact that we have that choice. We have a choice to be kind and compassionate. We have a choice to be kind and respect animals. So if we have that choice, why would we not choose to be that person, to be the vegan, and to be that person that's being kind to animals? Like you said, it's not necessary. So it's a choice to become vegan. It's not necessary to kill animals. So a lot of people were putting yes, so a lot of people did know about that. So if you knew about male chicks being killed, are you still supporting the egg industry? Do you still think that that's okay? Do you still think that that's justifiable? So as we got more and more people coming into the room now, please type a number 1 in the comments if you're vegan. Type a number 1 in the chat if you're vegan. Type a number 2 if you're open to learning more about veganism and hearing more and understanding and learning. Type a number 3 in the chat if you're here just to promote animal abuse. You're here because you don't give a shit about the animals. Type a number 1 if you're vegan, 2 if you're open to learning more. Type a number 3 if you're just here to troll, basically. And let's have a look at the comments. So Tree Camper, thanks for being here, number 2. Who else? We've got RTA, TR, TRT, number 2 as well. Thank you so much for being here. Hemingsley 2.5. Hopefully that goes from a 2.5 to a 2 to a 1. Silas, thanks for being here, number 2. Country Balls. It's great to see all the number 2s in the chat, and that's exactly why that we're outside these facilities. There's many activists all around the country today, all going live outside of a slaughterhouse. So those that have put a number 2, what I would urge you to do is, in the video description, there's a link to something called 3minutes.wtf. It's just a 3-minute video that shows you exactly what happens in these industries in just a succinct 3 minutes. It's changed, honestly, it's changed so many people's lives. It's completely free to watch. People come on these streams, they'll go and watch that 3-minute movie, and then they'll jump back on and they'll put in the comments how it made them feel. But also feel free to check out my Instagram, Alex Activism on Instagram, Alex Activism, and you can go and check out all the different things I do. I do street outreach, I go into farms, do vigils, do investigations. You know, I've seen a lot in this industry, and I'm trying to bring that information to the public eye, and that's why I'm live streaming today. So all those number 2s, you know, feel free to drop me a message on Instagram and let's talk and let's see what questions you have. But also all the number 2s, I'd encourage comments on these streams. We've got Aaron in the chat, who's also vegan, is a moderator and helping answer lots of comments. But also I'm going to pick up as many comments as possible. And it's these number 2s, the people that are clearly compassionate, that actually, that I'm trying to reach. And RTA is just saying, do you donate proceeds from your live streams to charity? So my live stream, this account is not monetized. I don't earn any money from this live stream. I'm here for the animals. I'm here to speak up for them and to reach the audiences that are here. So for all those number 2s, thank you so much for being here. And I guess you're somewhat on the fence, if that's accurate, because you're open to learning more. But what I would ask you then is, what is it that you don't know that you think will make that decision for you? What is it that you'd like to understand better? Is it that you don't understand the difference between veganism and vegetarians? Is it that you don't know, you know, from a health perspective, do you have concerns about, you know, eating plant-based? For all the number 2s, put those questions in the chat and I'll try and pick up as many as I can now. Someone said, what country are you in? So I'm in the UK, I'm in the south of England, at a slaughterhouse which slaughters hundreds of sheep every single day, and there's multiple slaughterhouses all around the country, all in this big facility behind me. So someone's saying, how do you get enough protein? All protein comes from plants. So what people don't realize, you know, when you look at the biggest, oldest and strongest animals in the animal kingdom, they're herbivores. They eat plants. And where do you think the cows and the sheep get their protein from? It all comes from plants. So we as humans, we can get high densely protein-rich foods like tofu, tempeh, seitan, legumes, beans. You've also got, you know, now in supermarkets, you've got vegan chicken, you know, vegan bacon, vegan sausages. You can get all the same foods with high protein without having to pay for animals to be killed. I've just seen, Aaron, I've seen your comment about medicine and research. Was there a comment about animal testing? Because I'm happy to speak about that. You know, that's why we do these live streams. There's a lot of topics that get brought up, but this is why, and this is a good sign because it means that we're actually understanding the concept of who a vegan is, what veganism is more, because it's not just about food. It's about clothes, it's about entertainment, and it's about animal testing. So put in the chat if you have any questions about animal experiments and animal testing. I'm happy to speak on that. And also we can talk about, you know, animals used in entertainment. We can talk about horse racing. We can talk about greyhound racing. Put in the chat what topic you'd like me to talk about. So Jammy Jazz saying, isn't soya bad for us? Absolutely not. Soya is not bad for us at all. Soya is healthy, it's nutritious. You know, look up the research about it. The meat industry may, you know, like with many things, they would like to project false information about certain products that threatens their industry. So like oat milk and soy milk, plant-based milk alternatives, they're obviously going to try and put campaigns up against that because they don't want people to stop drinking dairy milk. Okay, cheers, Aaron. Tofu is good to kill lame greyhounds. I don't really understand that comment. There's more protein in baked beans than steak. There's far less killing involved in baked beans than steak, that's for sure. So please put in the chat, let's see who's in the chat now. Type a number 1 in the comments in the chat if you're vegan. Type a number 1 if you're vegan, 2 if you're open to learning more, and 3 if you're an animal abuser, you enjoy animal abuse, you're here to troll. Let's see how many vegans we've got in the chat. Number 1 in the comments if you're vegan, number 2 if you're opening to learn, number 3 if you're just a troll. And let's see who we've got coming in. A few 3s. Vegan for life, thank you so much for being here. Where do you get your amino acids from? Well, we get them from plants. We get them from plants. All plants will contain the amino acids that you need. You can look this up. You don't have to take my word for it. Look at the British Dietetic Association, the American Dietetic Association, the World Health Organization. Studies from the University of Oxford all show that you can live happily, healthily throughout all forms of life. So just picking up Dale's comment, after watching Seaspiracy, I no longer eat Scottish salmon. Yeah, has anyone else? Put in the comments if you've seen a documentary on Netflix. It's called Seaspiracy. I think it was only on Netflix. Don't know if it was anywhere else. Have you seen Seaspiracy on Netflix? Put in the comments if you have. So that's interesting that, yeah, you've decided to not eat salmon after watching that, because I'd highly recommend people watch Seaspiracy. It shows you the truth about fish, the fishing industry, bycatch, and, you know, salmon, for example, the disease-ridden salmon that are grown on these fish farms that are just lying in their own filth and disease. And then what they do, they then dye the colour of salmon. They come out naturally like a greyish colour, and they dye them orange to package up in supermarkets to make them more appealing. Go and watch Seaspiracy. And yeah, Aaron said fish do feel pain. 100% they do. Fish feel pain. They have families. They have subjective experiences. They are sentient beings. So I put another question for you all then. Has anyone heard of a documentary called Dominion? Put in the comments if you've heard of Dominion, or you've heard someone say to you to watch Dominion. Have you heard that before? No? Well, for anyone that hasn't watched Dominion, it's completely free to watch on YouTube as well. I'd highly recommend watching it. It's a life-changing documentary. Please go and watch Dominion. And if you don't have time to watch the full documentary, in my video description, there's a link to something called 3minutes.wtf. You can see exactly what happens to those animals in this whole industry for food, for clothing, for sport in just 3 minutes. Go and check it out. You can copy and paste the link into your browser. Hey, Broccoli Babe, thanks for being here. Good to see the vegans coming in. So for everyone that's new, that's just come into the chat, and seeing different names coming in now. Actually, Victoria, what's your question? So please stop making meat eaters feel like they're villains. You've got to stop doing that or you're going to totally lose them. So Victoria, what I'm here to do and I do on all my live streams and outreach, is to simply inform and educate people. So, and as I'm going to be doing right now, so this is a slaughterhouse. This slaughterhouse takes in lambs at 4 to 6 months old to be taken in to the rear of the facility onto the lairage. Those lambs will be ushered off of that truck into the lairage and then through onto a conveyor belt-like system. Those sheep will go through one by one. They will then be electrically pronged in the head in the attempt to stun them, but we know that that doesn't work. Or potentially like bludgeoning with an electric prong to the back of their head, again in the attempt to stun them, but we know that doesn't work. Then what will happen is those sheep will be grabbed, often kicked and punched, as we've seen in investigation footage. The lambs will then have their throats sliced and they'll be hung up and they'll bleed to death. They'll have their heads chopped off. And that all happens because you, as the consumer, are paying for that. So Victoria's saying about, you know, villainizing meat eaters. I'm here to educate, inform, and hold people accountable. Because people don't know. I haven't been vegan all my life. But I watched a documentary and then my life changed and I knew that I had to speak up for animals. So whatever it is, some people, some people read a book, some people have a conversation on the street, some people watch a documentary, some people watch a live stream. Many people of live streams like this hear what happens and then they'll go and decide to be vegan. And it's about providing people with information. But Victoria, in terms of again, people that are villains, we see a lot of trolls in this chat. So my poll that's up saying, should we respect animals? And the majority of people are saying yes. Yet when you speak to those people that have voted, yeah, we can respect them, but we can also kill them and eat them. That doesn't make sense. That is a moral contradiction. And it's those people that I'm trying to reach because they're not, they need to be accountable. The classic excuses of but taste but plants and all plants feel pain. Literally, as I'm speaking, plants have feelings. No, they don't. These are the silly excuses that people and the industry love to thrive off to try and get people from eating, to get people to eat animals. So Victoria, are you Victoria? Are you vegan? Victoria, are you vegan? Very interested, because now you're also saying plants have feelings, so I don't know if you're vegan or not. So Pepsi Twist, you can respect a cow and eat it and drink its milk. So firstly, you're calling them an it. These animals are individuals. They're not an it, they are a they are a he, she, they're an individual, they are someone. And no, you cannot respect an animal when you're literally raping them. You're forcibly impregnating those animals. You're taking their babies away. You're killing you're killing the male calves in the dairy industry at under a month old. You're shooting them in the head because they're surplus. They don't produce milk. You're sending female cows to a slaughterhouse in the dairy industry at 3 to 5 years old because they stopped producing milk. You're sending chickens into gas chambers at 42 days old. You're killing male chicks on their first day of life in the egg industry. Vegetarians paying for dairy and eggs. You're paying for these animals to be killed. These sheep that are coming into this facility today, they are 4 to 6 months old. So what I'll do is just show you, for those that have recently joined the chat, this is a truck. Is there a truck coming out now? This is a smaller grey trailer that came in first this morning. And just look at the individuals inside that truck. Look at their eyes. Look how many are cramped in. How does that make you feel? The trailer then proceeds to go into the site. But the reality is, those lambs that will just go off of that truck have already likely been killed inside this facility. And then next we had a huge truck. Have a look at the size of this one. This is just loading now. Look at the sheer scale of these trucks. And they come in constantly in facilities all around the country, every hour of every day. Keep watching and you'll see one sheep in a minute where you look at them directly in the eyes. Keep watching. These trucks often come in very, very quickly, so you have to get it on slow-mo. But keep watching and you'll see in a minute that sheep at the front just looking out. Look into their eyes. How does that honestly make you feel? Look here. Look into their eyes. Genuinely, how does that make you feel? Knowing that if you're eating lamb products, you're paying for this. You are responsible for those animals being sent onto these massive trucks inside this facility. You are 100% responsible for these animals being killed. How does that really make you feel? Tasty, you kill plants, that's so sad. So Ross Meadows, thank you for being here. People even mentioning GoPros when it's not even a GoPro, which is hilarious. using non-vegan products. So again, like, I don't think people understand what a vegan is. Veganism is not a diet, it is not a product. Veganism is simply saying that I'm going to stop exploiting animals. I'm going to stop paying for their harm and for their suffering. That's all a vegan is. Within veganism, you have practices. So you say, right, I'm not going to eat animals. So you eat a plant-based diet. You say, I'm not going to wear animals' fur and skin. You're saying, I'm not going to pay for animals to run around like a racetrack and have their legs broken and their stomachs twisted. That's all that being vegan is. You're saying you're against this exploitation. But people clearly in this chat don't quite understand. You know, earlier on, about an hour ago, we had a lot of people learning lots and actually feeling like they were going to change. And then sounds like suddenly everyone's lost all their brain cells in this chat. So Victoria said, no, I'm not vegan. I just prefer vegetables. That's how I was born. I like the vegetables most. So do you think we should respect animals, Victoria? Because if you're already eating vegetables, what is it? Why would you not be vegan? So Eamon's saying, let's start with not exploiting humans. Well, animals are the most exploited group on Earth. 92 billion land animals slaughtered every single year. 92 billion land animals and trillions of fish. What greater exploitation by numbers is there than that? But yeah, I'm just scrolling up the chat. So Ross Meadows, thank you for being here if you're still here and actually witnessing that. So just gonna go looking through the chat. So talking about life-saving meds again, no vegan alternatives. So let's talk about, I'm just seeing that last comment as well. I'm gonna talk about animal testing in a second. So Clackety, you can stop putting that comment now. I'm going to talk about that. But Country People saying, I do think humans have the moral right to eat humans and animals. That's an interesting perspective, that you think it's okay that, you know, we can just eat and exploit whoever we want. That's an interesting moral stance. But what that is it's, you know, you're aligned in that you just think anyone can exploit anyone. But what people don't understand is, oh, maybe I've Maybe I misread your comment, Country Balls. Victoria Brown saying, right, like if we were allowed to have our own farms everywhere so that the animals could live healthy lives. Victoria, have you ever been to a happy, healthy farm? Have you ever seen those animals? Because those animals are the same ones that turn up to this site. There is no such thing as an ethical farm. Those animals at 6 months old are coming into this site to be killed when they should live to over 10 to 12 years. It cannot happen. You cannot enslave and breed animals and then kill them. There is no happy version of that story. So, Clackety, you can stop commenting now. I'm going to talk about it. So let's talk about animal experiments. And I'm interested to see in the chat who knows about animal experiments and who doesn't. We don't need to test on animals, is the bottom line. We do not need to test on animals. These tests are almost 100 years old, some of these tests. You look up the LD50 test. This test will be 100 years old next year. This is simply where they get a portion of animals and they will up the dosage on the medication being tested. They'll up the dosage until 50% of the group of animals die. It's called the lethal dose test, 50%. They kill half of the animals just to see how much dosage is going to kill them. That's almost 100 years old. What barbaric practices are we doing to these animals? But secondly, why on earth do we think it's a good idea to test on another species to get results for humans? To put this in perspective, if anyone's in the chat has a companion animal, like a pet dog, put in the chat if you've got a dog or a cat perhaps. Because if you do, you'll know that if you give chocolate to a dog, that is toxic, that is poisonous. You can kill the dog by giving them chocolate. Yet what people forget is that, you know, we as humans, we consume chocolate, we can eat it, we love it. You give it to a dog, it can kill them. Similar with cats and guinea pigs. You know, give cats and guinea pigs, they can be allergic to paracetamol. Mice, we test on mice, one of the most majority species tested on in this country. We test on mice. Mice can't even vomit. They don't even have the same reflective behavior to these substances. Why on earth are we testing on mice to give us things for a human? And it works both ways, where we test on animals and then it passes the animal phase of those tests. Let's say, you know, they've killed a load of animals and they found a dosage that works. 92% of animal experiments that pass the animal trials fail human clinical trials. 92%. That's almost every test that passes animals fails on humans. What a totally useless system. But also what happens, back to the question that I think Clacky's coming to about life-saving medication. All those drugs that we have ignored and discarded in the industry because they didn't work on a species that could have been a perfect fit for us, would have been completely discarded because it didn't proceed with the animal clinical trials. So animal testing is just a barbaric process, but the good news is we have solutions. Human-related, human-centric, accurate, reliable, better science. We have things called organ-on-a-chip. Organ-on-a-chip technology. Put in the comments if you've ever heard of organ-on-a-chip technology before. What this is a tiny little chip like this, and you can take organ samples from humans to replicate how a drug would impact on that. So for example, you can get lung on a chip, you can get gut on a chip, whatever those organs are, and you can run those tests and it will simulate based on human organs. Surely that's more accurate than testing it on a mice or a mouse or a rat or a rabbit. But we also have 3D modeling. Now with technology, we've got computer models. And we've also got skin tissue and cell tissue. We can test on our own species, on our own biologies, rather than relying on species that are so different from us. Yes, they may have similarities, but they are not the same, and they react very differently. Always think about the chocolate and the dog scenario, how different we are as species. Think about how cats and guinea pigs are allergic to paracetamol. Think about how mice can't vomit. And we made progress, let's say, with the government late last year, where they released a replacing animals in science strategy to phase out animal testing, because they know that better science is out there. They know that these tests are barbaric, like the LD50 test, the forced swim test, where you're literally drowning mice and rats. We know that that is old, it's barbaric, we don't need to do it anymore. So there's better science out there, and maybe that's something that people didn't know. So curious in the chat, put if you did or you didn't know about any of that information. I'm just going to scroll through the comments to see what I've missed, and thanks Broccoli Bay Baron for responding to anything. Vicky saying our farm is ethical, we grow potatoes. Yeah, I mean, farms that don't exploit animals are ethical, sure. Yeah, Country Balls for Kids vlog 8686, just found your comment. I don't think we should eat humans, it's a mistype. Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense. No worries. Just going through the comments. Right, I've just dropped to the bottom as there's quite a few. So for anyone that's just joined the chat, let's see who's in the room now. Type a number 1 in the chat if you're vegan. Type a number 2 in the chat if you're open to learning more. And type a number 3 in the chat if you're here just to troll people, if you're here because you like animal abuse. So 1 in the comments if you're vegan, 2 if you're open to learning more, 3 if you're an animal abuser. Let's see who we've got. So Alaskan Dentist, thank you so much for being here. Hey Jazz, good to see you. Number 1 as well. Good to see the vegans here, Vicky as well. A few animal abusers in the chat. So for those that have recently joined, so I'm at a slaughterhouse. This slaughterhouse is the truth, the dark truth behind your Easter Sunday roast. This slaughterhouse takes in sheep, lambs at 4 to 6 months old through this facility. They come on in trucks and trailers. They'll go to the back of the site where they'll be unloaded into what's called a lairage. They will grab the sheep, they will kick them, they will beat them off of the trailers to get them into the holding pen at the back of this site. Once they're in the site, they could wait there for hours depending on how many sheep that they're killing and processing throughout the day. And then what will happen is the sheep will be ushered through a conveyor belt-like system. Imagine a metal barrier that comes in at a V shape. So when sheep are forced through, they literally cannot move. They are dragged through this conveyor belt system, where the slaughterhouse workers will then take those sheep, they will grab them by their wool, by their heads. They'll get electric prongs and they'll try and prong them into their heads in the attempt to stun them. Sometimes they use like a metal pronger in the back and they'll thump them on the back of the heads in the attempt to stun those animals. But countless investigations, as we know, knows that stunning doesn't even work. So these animals were therefore like fully conscious. And then what will happen is they will grab them and they will slice their necks open. They will hang them up by their legs, they will slice their throats, watch them bleed out, and they will throw them into the pile along with the rest of the animals being killed today. That's the reality of your Easter Sunday roast. A lot of people in this chat earlier are all talking about, lamb roasts. This is the reality behind Easter. Easter's coming up. Lambs that are being born right now, in lambing season, you might be driving through the countryside and you see some cute lambs in a field. The reality is those lambs are going to end up at a place like this, all the sheep that have come in today, and they'll be the victims on your plate, their flesh on your plate if you're ordering a lamb roast dinner. And if that's something that you don't want to do, just have a vegan roast, have a nut roast, have vegetables. I don't care, just don't have animals on your plate. And for those that want to see what have just happened, this truck came in earlier this morning, small grey trailer from, this is your local farm, this is your small scale farm, your highly ethical, free range farm. They have already been killed today. They went in this morning, they've already been killed. And then more recently, we had a huge truck come in. Look at the size of this one. This is almost like a double-decker, almost like a triple-decker truck. And if you keep watching, you'll see in a minute, one lamb goes really close up and you can see their face just looking out. And you'll see them taking their last breath of fresh air from the outside world, from where they thought they'd be spending another 10 years on this world with us. These are the victims. If you're ordering lamb products, lamb chops, lamb doner, if you're having a lamb roast dinner, these have all been killed for the sake of your meal, your dish, your 5-minute sensory pleasure. Just look into their eyes, look at these beautiful sheep. How dare we pay for them to be killed? How does that honestly make you feel? How are people justifying this? How are people working here? Like security, they don't give a shit about the animals. It's mental. How could you support these industries? And again, people in the chats, love lamb meat, love lamb meat. How on earth are you enjoying saying, oh, I love animals that have their heads chopped off? Lamb's so tasty. So Ahmed, you're saying lamb is so tasty. If you're tasty, does that mean it's okay for someone to enslave you and chop your head off? Does that make it right if you put yourself in their position? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And Ahmed, if you have an ounce of compassion or empathy, just put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their shoes. How would you feel? Yes, eat plants. Plants don't feel pain. Plants don't have pain receptors. Plants don't have brains. They don't have sentience. Just eat plants. You don't need to consume animal flesh, dead body flesh. You don't need to consume that. What are you doing? So many people, clearly, and I said this earlier, we've obviously got a new audience in this stream that have come in recently. Once you graduate primary school, you'll learn that plants don't feel pain. As Aaron said earlier, I don't think anyone here actually has the education level above age 5, because you'll learn that plants don't feel pain. They don't have sentience, they don't have pain receptors. They physically cannot feel pain. And as I said earlier, let's pretend this bit of grass feels pain, okay? Let's pretend that it does. How the fuck does this justify chopping lambs' heads off in there? Just because this feels pain, how the hell does it make it okay to chop animals' heads off inside? This has nothing to do with the animals going into this facility. Come on, wake up, people. If you want to know the truth, in the video description there's a link to something called 3minutes.wtf. 3minutes.wtf. You can copy and paste that link, put it in your browser, and it will show you a 3-minute video of exactly what happens to these animals. People on these live streams go and watch that video, they come back on and they comment what they saw, and people go vegan after watching just that 3-minute clip. There is no justification for what we do to these animals. And I think you'd understand that if you just put yourself in their position. If you put yourself inside one of those trucks, how would you feel? How would you feel going in, being cramped in those conditions, being pulled off of a truck, and then being pronged in the head and having your throat sliced open? How would you feel if that was you? Genuinely, put in the comments, how would you feel? Just looking at the poll, so we've got 453 votes on the poll now. Still the same percentage. 70% of people think we should respect animals. So by theory then, 70% of people in this chat are vegan, right? Put in the comments if you say we should respect animals, but you're not vegan. Let's see who wants to respect animals, but is still paying for their abuse, murder and suffering. Vicky Lynn, devastated by this. Too right, I mean, that's a normal, natural response. People should be absolutely disgusted and devastated with this industry. That's a normal response. That's what many of the vegans in this chat have responded the same way, like myself. I watched a documentary called Earthlings, and it showed me what happens inside of a slaughterhouse. It showed me what happens on farms, in slaughterhouses, you know, for things in the pet industry, the clothing industry, the entertainment industry. And I realized that I didn't want to be a part of that. It was simple. I consider myself an animal lover, and I would have voted yes to saying we should respect animals. But the bottom line is you cannot respect animals and pay for them to be killed. You can't hurt them and respect them. Imagine a dog on the street. You wouldn't respect that dog on the street by kicking it in the face, would you? Maybe some people would comment, oh, yes, you do. It's very simple. Why can't we just leave animals alone? Why can't we just leave animals alone? We should live together harmoniously with these animals. They're not here for us. How we have grown to enslave, breed these animals. So this truck coming in now, this truck will take essentially the offcuts of the animal's body parts. It'll often say on them, not fit for human consumption on the back of these trucks. You know, heads, feet, shoulders, whatever it might be, body parts discarded, clothing will all be sent off onto those trucks. Same with in cow slaughterhouses, the cow hides are all loaded up onto those trucks and taken to, I don't even want to know where they go. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. Put in the chat if you have any genuine questions. You know, I've spoken a lot on this live stream about different animals that, you know, are exploited in this world. You know, I spoke a lot about the dairy industry earlier. I spoke about the egg industry earlier. Obviously speaking a lot about lambs, spoke a bit about pigs. What do you want to know? What do you want me to talk about? Comment dairy if you want me to talk about dairy industry. Comment eggs if you want me to talk about the egg industry. Comment greyhounds and horses if you want me to talk about the racing industry. Because I feel like a lot of people really don't understand the reality of what happens inside these facilities. This is a slaughterhouse for lambs, but this is a much wider issue. They're unloading. Yeah, they're unloading what will happen. So yeah, this truck behind me here is where they'll take the body parts of the animals. They'll often hang them up, and they're like refrigeration trucks. So the refrigeration trucks, the animals go in at the very rear of the facility. They'll be processed through where they're basically kicked and funneled through. They'll be pronged and then have their heads chopped off. Then they'll come through to this side of the site and they'll be loaded into those refrigeration trucks to be then taken to either further processing facilities or your local supermarket. That's where these animals will end up. So Gloria's saying dairy and eggs. So yeah, let's talk about dairy and eggs then. And again, I'm curious in the chat, type vegetarian if you're vegetarian in the chat, because this next part is going to be pretty much aimed at educating you as a group. So the dairy industry, take a female cow. What happens is you then take the bull from a semen. I'll let you think about how they get that. They take the bull from a semen and then they inject that using a metal rod. They will put their entire arm into the rear of a female cow to impregnate them. You have a farmer literally fisting the rear of a female cow with bull semen to impregnate them. Then, after months of holding that baby pregnant, just like your human mother would, they have their baby, they hold them in their pregnancy, and then the female will give birth. Now, if the female cow gives birth and it's a male, that male is likely shot under 1 month old. Thousands and thousands of male calves every single year are shot under a month old. Often, more often than in a slaughterhouse, they are shot on the same farm. And they shoot the male calves because they don't produce milk. They don't produce dairy. They are of no use to the dairy industry. So that female that's held that cow for months and months, their calf, their babies, they give birth and then the farmer takes that male calf away and shoots the baby. Now, if that calf is born and it's female, they are still separated from their mother and they are kept into white hutches. And once they're then old enough, they too will then be impregnated forcibly, i.e. raped, and then they will give birth and they will go through that same relentless cycle. So in the dairy industry, if you're vegetarian and you're paying for dairy, or if you're paying for cow's milk, cheese, yogurt, chocolate bars, if you're paying for those products, firstly, you're paying for male calves to be shot in the head. You're paying for babies to be separated from their mothers. And then you're paying for those female cows, the mother cows that have given birth, you're paying for them to come to a facility like this to be killed at about 3 years old, because they become physically exhausted from the relentless pregnancies and the milk taken from her, intended for her young, that they package up into products into a supermarket. If you're vegetarian, you're paying for animals to be killed in a slaughterhouse. They slaughter dairy cows, female cows, for cheap meats, for cheeseburgers, for things like pet food. That's what happens in the dairy industry. It's not byproducts, it's all co-products, it's all the industry. And vegetarians and non-vegans alike are both responsible. If you're not vegan, you're responsible for the slaughtering of male calves at 1 month old and responsible for female cows being killed at about 3 years old. Thousands, hundreds of thousands every single year. And the egg industry, okay, let's say you say, oh, you know, I'm dairy free, I don't drink dairy, but I do eat eggs. You too are also responsible for the killing of animals. If you're vegetarian but you eat eggs, this might be something that you didn't know before. So in the egg industry, similar to the dairy industry, if eggs hatch and they're males are no use to the egg industry. Just like male cows can't produce milk, male chicks won't lay eggs. So what happens? On their first day of life, they're sent into a macerator. Imagine a big production blender where thousands of male chicks on their first day of life come down a conveyor belt and are blended to death on their first day of life. Vegetarians, you are paying for this if you're paying for eggs. If you're not vegan and you're consuming eggs, you're paying for male chicks, tiny baby male chicks being slaughtered in a macerator at their first day of life. And let's say even if You know, we're not talking about the egg industry. Chickens who are bred for meat purposes, they're killed at only 42 days old on average, at 6 weeks old. These chickens are also lowered into gas chambers to be burnt from the insides and suffocated to death. If you're not vegan, you're paying for all of this. You're paying for cows to be shot, babies to be separated, chicks to be put into blenders, animals to be forced into gas chambers. If you eat bacon, if you eat pork, if you eat sausages, you're paying for cows at 6 months old to be lowered down in these big metal crates. They're called gondolas. They'll be lowered down in a cyclic motion. They'll go to the bottom and lowered into a pit of CO2 gas, an aversive gas that causes you to burn from the insides, burns your stomachs, burns your eyes, burns their lungs, and causes them to suffocate a painful and cruel death. And this is the most humane method that DEFRA seem to apply. Over 90% of pigs in the UK are killed using CO2 gas chambers. Over 90% are killed using this barbaric method. If you're not vegan, you are paying for this, and it's something that you probably wouldn't have known. If you're not vegan, you're paying for cows to be shot in the head, for lambs and sheep to have their heads chopped off at this site specifically. You're paying for chickens and pigs to be gassed to death. And it's so simple. You don't need to consume animals. You can eat plants. You can eat a plant-based diet, and that is suitable from a health perspective throughout all forms of life. Look up the British Dietetic Association, the American Dietetic Association, the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization, they've even stated that processed meats like red meat, so bacon, things like salami, they are classified as a class 1 carcinogen. They are known to have a direct causal link to cancer. Not a maybe, a direct link. Same as tobacco and cigarettes. That's the World Health Organization even saying that red meat and processed meat is detrimental to health. It causes cancer. You can thrive and survive off a plant-based diet. You can get high protein foods. You can eat tofu, tempeh, seitan, beans, legumes, vegan chicken, vegan sausages, vegan bacon. There is no excuse to be paying for an animal to have their heads chopped off. There is no excuse. So, thanks for everyone replying in the chat. I'll try and pick up some comments now. There's been a lot coming through, which is great. Keep the comments coming. So Baking, Alex, I'm a farmer in the south coast of England. I think what is happening with animals killing is so wrong. What is your input on this? So you're a farmer and you think it's wrong? Because I agree, it's totally wrong. It is totally wrong what we do to these animals. These are baby animals at a few months old that we send into these slaughterhouses to have their heads chopped off. 4 months old, these lambs coming in, they should live to over 12 to 15 years old in their natural habitats with their families. But no, they're shipped off on trailers and killed behind these gates. This is the dark reality of Easter. And I showed you the trailers earlier, but there's a few individuals that these, as an individuals, these are the victims that you are paying for if you're not vegan. If you're ordering lamb chops, if you're ordering lamb doner, a lamb roast, this individual has had to die specifically because of what you're doing. On these trailers, they're about to go to their death. How does that make you feel, knowing that you are responsible for this if you're not vegan? Put a number 1 in the comments, in the chat if you're vegan. Put a number 2 if you're open to learning more about veganism, if you're open to learning about what happens to animals. Put a number 2. And type number 3 if you're just a troll and you're here because you love animal abuse and you're here to just spam. Type a number 1 if you're vegan. Type a number 2 if you're open to learning. Type a number 3 if you're here to troll. Let's see who we've got in the chat at the moment. Seeing a lot of 3s, a lot of trolls, a lot of triggered people, clearly. Good to see a few 1s in the chat and a couple of 2s. Thank you so much I'm here to speak to the number 2s, those that are here to learning more. And it's so important having vegans in this chat. So everyone that's putting a number 1, thank you so much for being here, responding to comments, and even just helping these live streams by liking them, sharing them, and just being a viewer massively helps get this content out. And it's the number 2s that are opening to listening who I'm speaking to. And there's a lot of people that I know are a number 2 but probably won't say it and are just there in the background watching these streams. It's you I'm also speaking to. Because I know that you have some interest and you have compassion. And it's just a case of connecting the dots between the actions that you take, and that's how you can live a compassionate life and actually stop paying for things that you maybe don't realize is happening. You may not realize that, you know, when you think you're buying, you know, let's say Red Tractor approved or RSPCA assured and humanely killed products on your family local farm. What people don't realize is they'll all end up in the same slaughterhouse. They'll all have their heads chopped off in the exact same way. But know that it doesn't have to be that way. In the video description, if you've put a number 2, go to the video description and watch, there's a link called 3minutes.wtf. You can copy and paste that link into your browser. It's just a 3-minute video. If you can watch this live stream, you can go and watch a 3-minute video. It's completely free to watch. Go and watch that and come back onto the stream and let me know what you thought. People go vegan after just watching that. On my last stream, someone went and watched that video, they came back on and they said that they're now going to be vegan. And it's not hard to, once you've realized and maybe seen something or heard something. As I said earlier, a lot of people go vegan for different reasons and at different times. You know, I haven't been vegan all my life, but it was after watching something when I realized that I didn't want to support these industries anymore. I couldn't pay for animals to be hurt. That wasn't who I was. You know, I would say I'm an animal lover. I didn't realize that my choices were actually paying for these animals to be killed, to be exploited for various things. And again, veganism isn't just a diet. Veganism isn't just about food. It's about the harm and the exploitation of animals. It's the principle that we just should live without exploiting them, without using them for any of our own benefit. Within that is obviously the food system. You know, the most dominant form of animal exploitation is in the food system. But animals are killed for their clothing, for their fur, for their wool, for their leather. Their skin is just ripped off of them. Animals abused and exploited in entertainment. Greyhound racing. 1 dog died every 3 days on racetracks last year alone. 1 dog died every 3 days on a greyhound track. People just think, oh, it's a fun day out or a fun sport. Dogs are dying almost every single day. And it's the same thing with horse racing. It's the same thing with horse racing. You might think it's a fancy day out and gambling some money and it's all luxurious. You're dressed in your suits, paying, you know, God knows how much on champagne. And what's happening is those horses, a horse died every other day in 2024. A horse died every other day because they're forced to jump these fences. They jump these fences, they break their necks, they break their legs, and they're often shot on the course. And the amount of horses that don't even make it to the races, the horses that are bred, trained from a young age, and then simply sent to a slaughterhouse. I feel like people don't even realize that horses are sent to slaughterhouses from the racing industries. They have racing passports and often then are killed for consumption by humans. Do you think it's right that we should eat horses? Put in the comments if you think it's right to eat horses. So I imagine people maybe have companion animal horses, or what you may call a pet horse, a horse that you may ride. Do you think that's okay that people eat them? Because that's what happens in this country. Horses that are bred in these industries, who are discarded, who don't make the cut, end up in a slaughterhouse and then often exported to another country like France for human consumption, or for things like pet food. That's the racing industry. When people think it's so innocent, greyhound racing, horse racing, you're literally paying for their death. The quote, "you bet they die." It's as simple as that. They are raced to death, whether it's on the course itself, where they break their necks, they break their legs, they twist their stomachs, or for those, the thousands that never even make it to the courses. Sounds like a truck. No. So again, like this, there's so many vehicles coming by on this farm road. know what's going to turn up. Horses are an invasive species. That's a mental claim. Not heard that one before. Yet people don't realise that these horses are literally bred into existence for the racing industry. They get, what do they call them? They get the stallions with a brood mare, to use all their technical language. They get these stallions that are meant to be, you know, thoroughbred, the best sort of quality, and they will get them to breed with many different horses to produce offspring, and they will race them, and maybe one, if they're lucky, will make the cut. The rest discarded, killed in slaughterhouses. People don't realise that all these animals that we exploit are literally bred into existence because of us. We breed 92 billion land animals just for food alone. Pigs, cows, chickens. 92 billion land animals. And then the fish. Trillions and trillions of fish. People were talking about Seaspiracy earlier in the chat. Go and watch Seaspiracy and you can see that for yourself. But when you picture the vast amount of fish, when they go out with big trawler nets and they scrape literally acres of the ocean bed, taking everything in its path. So you get the fish that you'll probably be killing and eating, but you're also getting all of the other habitats and other species. Turtles, dolphins, whales, sharks, hundreds of thousands of these species that people claim to love. People love dolphins and turtles, but they don't realise that they're actually killing them because you're ordering fish. And salmon farms, like the Scottish salmon farms that someone mentioned earlier from Seaspiracy, they are literally bred in a fish farm. This is just a farm on water where they're literally laying in their own disease. It is disgusting, and what happens is these salmon, once they're killed, they come out a natural grey colour. They take an orange dye and they dye the fish orange and put them in supermarkets for things like smoked salmon to make them look appealing. These are all tricks that the industry do to try and make food appealing for you because they don't want you to realise the reality of what's happening to them. This is the reality, and like this place today, this is the shocking horror of Easter. This tradition that's coming up in a couple of weeks where people are going to order a roast dinner. You have that choice after hearing about and seeing those sheep coming in on trailers into this site. You have the choice now whether you're going to be personally responsible for the death of those sheep. You can just have a vegan roast, a nut roast. Just eat vegetables. You can still have the same traditions, the same meals. You can still go for a roast on Easter Sunday if that's your traditional thing to do, if that's your cultural thing to do. You can still do that. Just take the animals off your plate. You don't have to support these industries. You don't have to support these industries. If you're kind and compassionate, you just can live vegan and say, I'm not going to pay for animals to have their heads chopped off. It's really not an extreme thing to do. So yeah, thanks for everyone replying in the chats. I haven't been picking up a lot. If you've got any questions, if you've got any topics you want me to answer, put them in the chat now. Put any questions, valid questions, not spam, valid questions, and I'll try and pick them up now. Someone said about vegan dog meat. Well, what I would just say on that is your dog should be vegan too. Last on Sunday, how do you feel about seeing all this footage? Ghost Ridden saying about vegetarian. So if you hadn't already seen earlier, the dairy industry, the egg industry, you're paying for female cows to be raped, have their babies taken and sent to slaughterhouses. You're paying for male chicks to be killed on their first day of life. Vegetarians are still paying for animals to be killed. Vegetarians are pointless. Pointless. You should be vegan. Someone saying we need meat. You don't need meat. You do not need meat. If you needed meat, I wouldn't be standing here right now. You do not need meat. Please explain how we adapted to eating meat and predation, how carnivory. We're not carnivores. There's not nothing carnivorous about us. I don't see you running across a field, catching a gazelle with your bare hands and ripping them apart with your teeth. We used to live on survival. We used to eat and scavenge whatever we could. But you look back in time, look at the gladiators. They didn't eat meat. They were predominantly vegetarians. We have the knowledge and the facilities today that we know that we can thrive off eating plants. It's actually healthier for you. And knowing that we don't have to send animals into gas chambers, surely that's a benefit. But also, what we didn't do back in our olden days was enslave 92 billion land animals with factory farm systems and slaughterhouses and supermarkets. None of that existed in history. Sorry, I've seen a lot of comments have just dropped to the bottom again. Thanks everyone who's responding to the other. There's a lot of questions coming in, which is great. Keep them coming. And I'll try and pick up some of the questions. So I've seen this one again. What's the difference between vegetarian and veganism? So vegetarians is simply a diet where don't eat meat, but they're still paying for animals to have their heads chopped off in the dairy industry and in the egg industry. Veganism is not a diet, it's a principle that we should live without exploiting animals. So vegans don't eat animals, they don't wear animals, and they don't pay for their entertainment. Does that explain the difference between vegetarian and veganism, or do you want me to go into more depth about the dairy industry and the egg industry? Why are you so dishonest? Tell me exactly what have I been dishonest about in this stream? Come on, tell me. Everything I'm saying on this stream is 100% true, is 100% true. I'm literally stood outside of a slaughterhouse. If you want to, come down and I'll show you around. If you don't believe me. Someone said, are you going to save some lambs? 100%, yes. Being a vegan, you're saving over 200 animals a year. I'm saving lambs by not paying for them to have their heads chopped off, and you can do the same. So, okay, what's your favorite vegan meal? I struggle with good meals. So what I would recommend when you're looking for like good vegan meals is firstly, there's so many recipe books out there, but the other thing is we have the internet, right? Google, even things like Gemini or ChatGPT, you can make whatever vegan recipes, the dishes that you liked before, you can make them all vegan. You can still have vegan burgers, you can have vegan spaghetti bolognese, you can have vegan curries. All you have to do is replace the animal parts and you can cook the exact same things. What's your favorite dishes? Because you can always make a vegan version of it. And you'll actually learn to be even more creative with foods. Things like tofu, it's such a versatile thing that I had never had before. It's high in protein. Tofu, you can use it as meat substitutes. You can use it as egg substitutes. Chana masala, delicious. Chickpea curry, yeah, beautiful. Yeah, exactly. Vegan meals are delicious and super nutritious, absolutely. And when you're talking about, plant-based foods, in a supermarket or on a weekly shop, your plant-based food shop is going to be 30% cheaper on average. Because think about it, things like rice, beans, legumes, fruits and vegetables, they're some of the cheapest and most accessible foods throughout the world. James Donnelly, yeah, chickpea curry, yeah, it's becoming a favorite in the chat. Chickpea curry. Again, chickpea, what a versatile little legume, pea, whatever they are. What a versatile little thing chickpea is. Make some hummus out of it, make some curries with it. Delicious. So I think I've missed what 23 Hex one and Aaron's. I think there's a little debate going on there. I think I've missed exactly what that's on about. Maybe 23 Hex one, if you've got any questions for me, I'm happy to talk about that. Xanthium, I'm not broke, buddy. Some of us have jobs. Yeah, well, in that case, you can afford even more plant-based foods. A lot of people will say, some people say it's too expensive. Some people say it's cheap. You can never win, but plant-based foods are the ones that aren't going to be chopping animals' heads off. And there's so many, nowadays in the supermarkets, you've got your whole meat-free aisles, your vegan aisles. You can get vegan sausages, vegan burgers, vegan bacon. You can even get vegan black pudding, which is baffling to me. But yeah, you can have all those luxury goods as well. So Aaron said, Alex, basically he's saying plant-based dogs is animal abuse. Oh, wow. Okay, plant-based, let's talk about that, shall we? dogs don't need to eat meat. Dogs can thrive off of plant-based diets. Look up Omni Pet Food or Benevo Pet Food. You can look at their science articles as well. Look up Dr. Andrew Knight. He has done countless studies on the health benefits of putting dogs on plant-based diets. But also anecdotally, so many people around me have put their dogs on plant-based diets, their health conditions have cleared up, and what you're actually doing, you're being more loving to your dogs if you feed them plant-based, because statistically proven, their longevity increases. So if you want your dogs to live a longer, happier lives, you'd feed them a plant-based diet. This has been proven. Look at Dr. Andrew Knight's science and look up plant-based dog food. Yeah, exactly. Hey, Liz and Megan. Yeah, dogs do not eat meat. Yeah, exactly. Dogs can be vegan, they just get depressed and they hate you. Well, Coca-Cola, if you really cared about your dogs, you'd feed them plant-based foods. It's going to make them healthier and live longer. So yeah, if 23 Hex 1 is just doubling down on his animal abuse. So for anyone that's just joining the chat, put a number 1 in the chat if you're vegan, put a number 2 in the chat if you're open to learning more about veganism and the animals, put a number 3 in the chat if you're here just to troll, just because you're a proud animal abuser, because you're here just because you hate vegans. Type a number 1 if you're vegan, put 2 if you're open to learning, put 3 if you're a troll. Let's see who we've got in the chat. 1, 3, 3. 3s. Good to see. Eat Burger number 2. Number 2. This is brilliant. This is why we do these streams, is for the number 2s in this chat, those that are open to learning, opening to finding out more, because this could be the first time, if you're putting a number 2 in the chat, this could be the first time you've seen the gates of a slaughterhouse. This slaughterhouse that takes lambs and sheep inside at 4 months old. For those that have recently joined the stream, what I'm going to show you now is 2 trucks that have come in already today, this morning. Both very different sizes. So the first truck is what your sort of local family farm and free range truck is. So this is what happens at this site. Trucks will turn up. So this is your free range farm, your happy local farm down the road. All the sheep cramped inside. They will then go beyond these gates. And then this second one, which is a huge truck. Look at the size. And then keep watching and you'll see in a minute, one of the sheep, you'll see their faces as they're looking out in their final moments, getting the last sort of breath of air of the life that they'll live. This is exactly what happens at these facilities. Keep watching. Put some green hearts in the chat if you feel sad and feel empathy for these animals. Put some green hearts in the chat. Look at this individual. About 4 or 5 months old perhaps. Only been around a few months on the world. Look how many there are. This is like double-decker truck as well. There's floors above them. And what happens is those trucks then go to the rear of the facility, the very rear of this site. They'll then be taken, offloaded, and we've seen footage of this happening. They will usher them off of their truck, they will whack them, kick them, beat them to get them off of the trailers and into the back of the facility, so what they call the lairage, a big holding pen. Some of these sheep are just stood in that pen for hours and hours, huddled together, whilst they hear and smell their companions being killed in this facility. They get processed through in a conveyor belt like system. Imagine a big metal ramp in a V shape where the sheep are pushed through so they can't physically turn around. They are ushered through the conveyor belt, and then the slaughterhouse worker will get electric prongs and they will attempt to stun the animals. They will prong them in the heads or take the back of a blunt item with an electric prong to, again, attempt to stun them in the back of their heads. But we know that doesn't work. We know that actually the stunning of animals does not work. These animals are conscious. And once they've been pronged, they will grab them by their heads, by their wool, and then they will slice their throats open. They'll hang them up, their blood will drip, and they'll move on to the next one, like a conveyor belt. They'll then be taken to this part where they're hung up and then put into refrigeration trucks. These refrigeration trucks will then drive to other processing facilities to chop them up even more, and often go to your supermarkets and warehouses. So, you know, your M&S, your Tesco, the Sainsbury's, your Lidl, your Asda, every supermarket, the animals come from places like this. And that's the dark reality behind Easter. If you're paying for a lamb roast dinner, for lamb chops, lamb kebabs, you're paying for this site to function. You're paying for animals to have their heads chopped off. Last on Sunday, what do you want me to talk about? You know, I'm talking about a lot of industries, spoken about the dairy industries, the egg industries, talking about the lambs industries, pig industries, talking about greyhound racing, horse racing. Talk a lot about animal testing. Do you have anything you'd like me to talk about, or anyone else? Put in the chat if there's a topic you'd like me to speak about. He's not real, he's just AI. Brilliant. You're a carnivore, built man. You're a carnivore, are you? So where'd you get your food from? Supermarket, or do you hunt down animals with your blunt hands and your blunt teeth? Miss Teaspoon, so Alex, can you talk about kosher, halal meat and how they meet their deaths? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that surprisingly hasn't come up in this live stream, but comes up in a lot of them all the time, is about halal meat and kosher meat. Essentially, this all falls under the bracket of religious non-stun slaughter. And this is where I think it really divides people. And I'd be curious to see what people, you know, say in the chat about this. But essentially, there are two main types of methods of the killing of animals. So in the UK, obviously the government's preferred and DEFRA's preferred methods is to stun animals, but you have religious exemptions. So for kosher, for halal, there are religious exemptions on how they slaughter those animals, in that they will not stun them, they will slice their necks open, because that in their religion is the most humane way to do it. But as we know, in a lot of halal slaughterhouses, they stun the animals or attempt to. There's also rules about animals shouldn't be allowed to see another animal as they're killed. Yet countless times, animals are literally face to face with their friends and their family members, watching them as they die. Whether it's kosher, whether it's halal, whether it's stunned or non-stunned, we know that in these facilities, they don't do anything properly anyway. So this is a stun facility. We know that that doesn't work. We know that the animals are still conscious when they get killed. And in halal facilities, they sometimes stun them, they sometimes don't. But the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if they stun them or not, because at the end of the day, that animal's going to have their heads chopped off. So if it was you in their position, if it was you, would you really care if you're about to have your head chopped off when you're only 6 months old? Or would you want someone to save you and not be put in that position in the first place? So we've now got 585 votes on the poll. Still, the majority, 70% of people think we should respect animals. I love how they're just moving the staff away because they don't want to get anywhere near to me. Even the staff aren't allowed to sit there because an activist is here. But again, like, this is the pressure that we have as activists. Just by one person being here, staff has to be outside the entire time. You have one staff member inside, so 2 security when one activist is here, 2 security. One must remain outside at all times, keeping an eye. And any staff that come anywhere sort of near here are ushered away because they don't want people speaking. Because, yeah, what's going to happen is we'll speak to them and they'll tell us also how tragic it is inside. 2 a.m. vote. Other animals eat other animals, so why can't we eat? Well, that's, again, right. So you're choosing the idea that because an animal kills another animal in nature, that justifies us doing what we do to animals. Okay, firstly, depends what animals you're talking about. Let's talk about all the herbivorous animals in the animal kingdoms. You know, hippos, rhinos, elephants. These are all herbivorous. They don't eat animals. So, you know, why are you picking some animals from the animal kingdom and not others? But secondly, just because a lion kills a gazelle doesn't mean that we have to enslave and breed billions of land animals and chop their heads off in these facilities. That does not justify it. In the same way that if plants felt pain, that does not justify killing sheep in this facility. Xanthipus, why do you deny science? What science? What science am I denying? Come on, what science? It's so simple. It's so simple to live vegan. It's so simple to say, I don't want to hurt animals, so I'm not going to pay for those products. It's so simple. Having just an ounce of compassion, which I think Xanthipus clearly doesn't have any compassion or empathy. It's just a proud animal abuser. Simo, we are animals and not herbivores. You want to push herbivorous, fine, but don't push your views on me. Well, Simo, don't you push animals into fucking slaughterhouses. Don't you dare cause these animals to have their heads chopped off. We're talking about us and vegans always pushing their views when I'm just simply stood outside educating the public about what happens inside and people saying, don't push your views on me. You don't have to be in this live stream. You don't have to be here. But how dare you then have the privilege to tell me what to do when you're paying and are 100% responsible for animals having their heads chopped off? How dare you? Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be here, you know. Literally, it's like when people get really, you know, I get a lot of complaints because I'm not responding to comments, or I'll get complaints because what I'm doing you don't believe in. No one's asking you to be on this stream. You don't have to be here. I'm here to educate the people that put a number 2 in the chat. I'm here to educate people that are actually interested, people that have an ounce of compassion, people that have a heart, people that care about animals, and people that have voted yes to saying we should respect animals. That's who's in this live stream right now. 53 people in the room. These are the people that I'm trying to reach. And activists all around the world are doing live streams today to have that same message. Because people aren't inherently bad. You know, often, you know, non-vegans might feel targeted, but actually, you know, we were all in your position once. I wasn't vegan all my life. So we often give the benefit of the doubt because maybe you don't realize that the products that you're paying for basically funds this establishment of killing animals every single day of the week. But the people that know it happens, have seen footage, and are just proud to be animal abusers, they're the people that we've got no time for. Ultrapad saying, you think you're superior, narcissist. What I think is that we shouldn't exploit animals. That's not being superior. That's just saying we should not, literally, it's almost the opposite of being superior. You think you're superior by saying humans are here and animals that we kill for food are here. You need to get rid of your superiority and actually think, you know, we should be equals. We should stop exploiting them. How do you think about that? What's your comment on that? And yeah, Miss Teaspoon, you've also put, yeah, look at Challenge 22. There's a link on my link tree on my YouTube channel. There's a link to what's called Challenge 22. And this gives you free resources, free recipes, also gives you mental guidance and advice on what happens inside of these slaughterhouses. On what happens in the industries, and shows you the plant-based diets that you can live off. Reki Eat saying, read the Bible. Does the Bible say that we should breed animals? Does the Bible say we should breed 92 billion land animals? Miss Teaspoon, Solent is thinking of moving from a 2 to 1. Oh, that's amazing news, Solent. So what is it that, you know, do you have any questions? Because like from right now, Solent, you can say, no, I'm not going to support these industries anymore and I'm going to live vegan. Many people do that. What I'd recommend you is go and watch the video in my video description. It's called 3minutes.wtf. And go and watch just 3 minutes of what happens and it will change your life. But what I'd also recommend, Solent or Solo, not sure of your name, drop me a message on Instagram. So this is where they're taking a lot of the body parts, the excess body parts, the hides. And then this was a huge truck. Look at the size of this trailer. All of these animals would have been killed now. That must have come in so early. Look at the size and the scale. So Solomon, yeah, please drop me a message on Instagram, Alex Activism, we can chat further. But Solomon, from now on, you can live vegan and you can say, right, I'm not going to support these industries anymore. I'm not going to buy animal products for food, for clothing, and I'm not going to support their, animals used in entertainment. That's all being a vegan is saying, I'm not going to pay for animals to be exploited. I'm going to live compassionately. And there's so many resources out there, like Alicia said, there's Challenge 22, you've got Google and ChatGPT for like recipe advice. There's so much out there. It's so easy to live as a vegan. But knowing that you're not being like a hypocrite, if you think we should respect animals, but you're also paying for them to be killed, you don't have to be a hypocrite. You can live in alignment with your actions. So thank you for Solomon and all the other number twos in this chat who have said that they're open to learning more. And I'd argue all of these, the yeses, 70%, 609 people voted, and 70% are saying that we should respect animals. So I would say that, hundreds and hundreds of people should all be vegan who's come onto this stream today. So Kellen's saying you're not going to respect the animals by not eating them. You can't love an animal, you can't respect an animal if you're paying for them to be killed. Just reading through some of the comments. Yeah, thanks Jazz and Alicia and Aaron for being a mod. Massively helps in these streams and answering everyone's comments. What do you want? Do you have any things that you want debunking? Do you have any concerns or questions about being vegan? Put them into the chat. In the Bible, cattle are consistently portrayed as essential livestock for sustenance, labour. So, Reese Eats, here's the question for you, and I'm asking it directly to you, Reese Eats. How would Jesus kill an animal? How would Jesus kill an animal? And I look forward to seeing your response on that. And no, absolutely we do not eat fish. Fish are animal species like any other, who suffocate to death, have their heads whacked in and being killed. Of course not. Parid says, I'm Muslim, not vegan. Well, you can be vegan and Muslim. Not sure what the point of that comment was. Still waiting for receipts to answer about the Jesus question. You're no better than people who push religion on it's your view. Is it my view, or is it the objective truth that's happening in this facility? There is no opinion about what happens here. There is no opinion, there's no belief system, there's no, my view versus your view. This is a slaughterhouse that slaughters animals about 4 to 6 months old to be killed for the sake of a meal. There is no opinion in that. There is no opinion in that. This is fact. And if you don't believe me, come here, come down and let's have a chat. There's no opinions in this. This is why we do these live streams. This is not opinion. This is the facts. This is the reality. This is why we're educating people. People make their own decisions. Still didn't see receipts reply about the Jesus question. No. And that just shows clearly, clearly you don't know how Jesus would kill an animal, because he wouldn't, because he is also compassionate, apparently. So eat burger, eat kosher and halal, it's more humane. So eat burger, so if I was to slice your head open, would that mean it's under halal rules? Does that mean it's humane for you, eat burger? And maybe you should look up some footage. So if you if you Google animal aid investigations, you can see investigative footage inside halal slaughterhouses and non-halal slaughterhouses. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to my channel. If you want to see more of these live stream contents, I put out a lot of videos of street outreach debates, farm investigations. Please go and subscribe to my channel and like this video as well. It helps get shown to more and more people. And thank you everyone for being here. Really appreciate everyone's support, especially all the vegans in the chat. Aaron, since the very start of the stream, you've been here. Thank you so much. Jazz, thank you so much for being here. Alicia, thank you so much for being here. Broccoli Babe, and all the other vegans in this chat, thank you so much for being here. This almost 62-year-old is being vegan, is very healthy. Wow, there we go, 62-year-old, healthy and vegan. That's not longevity proof, I don't know what is. But for those that have put number 2, please do drop me a message on Instagram at Activism, and let's talk about, you know, what are the barriers or what questions you might have. But go to the video description and go to the link to 3minutes.wtf, and go and watch that 3-minute video and you'll see the truth for yourself. But as the title of this stream was the truth behind Easter, exposing it, if you're paying for a roast lamb on Easter Sunday, you're paying for animals to have their heads chopped off here. You're paying for animals to be killed. And you don't need to. Have a vegan roast, have a nut roast, stop paying for animals to be killed, live vegan, and it's as simple as that. Stop paying for animals to be exploited for food, for clothing, for entertainment. You can live happily and healthily throughout all forms of life on a plant-based diet. You can live in alignment with your values and say that we're not going to exploit animals. It's as simple as that. So please do like, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you on the next live stream.